Hello and welcome to Rally Point Wargaming, a video series dedicated to the how, the whats and the whys of assembling your armies in the Warhammer 40k universe. All rules and overall points are accurate at the time this video was posted. Today we're going to be looking at one of my personal favourite armies with a variation of a theme that's popping up quite commonly in the tournament scene. So cue up your best alien memes, Starship Troopers gifs and throw in a few Godzilla clips while you're at it, because it's time for the Tyranid big bugs to have some fun, in a list I call Kaiju Rampage. As always, we're looking at a 2000 point match play list, and we're using a single Tyranid battalion detachment. I will be using the Jormungandr Hive Fleet, primarily for its defensive bonus, in that unless a model can fly, advances or charges, it counts as having the benefit of cover versus ranged attacks, adding +1 to its armor save against shooting. I will note that throughout this video I may use terms such as friendly units when describing abilities and who they affect. For the sake of this list, using a single Hive Fleet, this will be accurate. However, be aware that some abilities here are specific to friendly units in the same Hive Fleet, so lists that use multiple Hive Fleets may find that some combinations don't work. I will also mention that while this is a pure Tyranid list, a number of the units here are Forge World models, to a degree that this list doesn't really work without them. As such, while I normally would just make a passing comment on where a unit's rules can be found, the Imperial Armour Compendium is a necessary part of this list. In the HQ slot, we have the linchpin at the head of the force, the Swarm Lord. One of the few Tyranid named creatures, less a specific character and more a certain set of skills that any of the Hive Fleets can deploy when needed. It's a Hive Tyrant, which means it's a Synapse creature, a special rule that Tyranids use, that allows their leader beasts to assert their will over their lesser grunt units, providing they're in range, making them automatically pass morale tests and letting them make tactical decisions instead of simply lashing out at the nearest threat. Most Synapse creatures also project the Shadow in the Warp special rule, which reduces the results of psychic tests made by opposing non-Tyranid psykers if they're in range. The Swarm Lord's most important ability, though, is easily Hive Commander, which allows him to nominate a friendly unit within 6 inches of him during the shooting phase, and immediately letting it move again and advance if it wishes, as if it were a second movement phase. Combine this with the fact that he's also a Psyker with the psychic power Onslaught, which allows a unit to charge, even if it advances, and he's almost guaranteeing a first turn charge. Remember also that the psychic phase comes before the shooting phase, so you can see if you're successful with Onslaught before committing to launching a unit up the board. Should he reach combat himself, he's no slouch with 6 attacks at strength 8, AP 3, damage 3, with additional mortal wounds done if he rolls a 6+ to wound. He has a 4+ invulnerable save, which improves to a 3+ in melee, additional bonus tail attacks, an explode mechanic if he's killed, and an extra psychic power that really is your choice. I decided to choose the Horror as it has a good range and also benefits whatever gets sent screaming into the enemy lines, reducing an enemy unit's hit rolls and leadership. The second HQ is a Malanthrope, and this is our first Forge World model. Very common in Tyranid lists, they are taken primarily as they generate a 6-inch bubble that means anything shooting at a unit within its range suffers a -1 to hit. They're also Synapse creatures, able to control the beast they are protecting, and are characters with only 9 wounds, meaning that they're more difficult for opponents to target them. They have no shooting or psychic powers, but although they're not strong melee fighters, they can hold their own, and should an enemy model die within 3 inches, then it gains an additional aura that allows friendly units within 6 inches to reroll 1s to wound. The Malanthrope is also carrying the only relic in this list, being the only model that can, and even then it's only capable of choosing between 3. Of those 3, I was tempted by Infrasonic Roar, which reduces the leadership of enemy units within 6 inches, but leadership tricks aren't amazing, and I really don't want anything that close anyway, so I picked the Norn Crown, which extends the tactical control aspect of Synapse up to 30 inches. The troops choices are made up firstly of 2 8-man Tyranid warrior squads, all reduced to their bare bones loadout of just 2 pairs of Scything Talons. This may seem pretty basic, but it means a full unit is throwing out 32 strength 4 attacks, hitting on 3s and rerolling 1s. Being Jormungandr, they have a 3+ save against shooting and 3 wounds, meaning that on paper, they're actually comparable to Primaris Assault Intercessors. All they're lacking is the save in combat and the AP on their weapons. What pushes them over the edge, however, is a new system added in Psychic Awakening Blood of Baal, a supplement that gave the Tyranids an interesting alternative to Warlord traits, which you may have noticed I haven't mentioned during the HQ choices. Although the Malanthrope will be my Warlord, it doesn't actually have a Warlord trait. Instead, by foregoing the Warlord trait on a character, I can instead choose one from a list of adaptive physiologies to apply to a unit. Now this may very well be given to a character to make it more killy, an artillery beast on the back line to give it an invulnerable save, or in this case, to an entire unit of warriors to improve their resilience. And there is a one-use stratagem that also lets you use it again, which is why both my units of warriors have the Enhanced Resistance physiology. Enhanced Resistance means that any attack made against them with an armor penetration of 1 or 2 is counted as 0, meaning they can shrug off a lot of anti-infantry firepower that would chew through most Space Marine squads. They either get their full save, or no save at all, or a 6+ at range versus AP3 thanks to Jormungandr. Once again, they're also synapse creatures, so again, no failed morale checks to make them run away. Lastly in the troops is a simple unit of Rippers, 4 bases of this swarm unit that deploy off the board and pop in wherever needed. Usually running interference, they're not especially resilient, but have a few interesting tricks as well as a stratagem in Blood of Baal that gives them a -1 to be hit after burrowing up. Add that to the Jormungandr buff, and they're a decent little objective grabber. For the elites, we begin with another big bug, the Maleceptor. Yet another synapse creature, this one is a hulking brute designed to carry a very big brain. It's a psychic monster, in that it can cast and deny like any other psyker, but it automatically gets a +1 to its psychic test rolls, and also has a psychic overload rule that allows it to inflict a number of mortal wounds on units around it instead of using its normal psychic phase. For powers, I have chosen to give it Catalyst, which allows it to give a unit a 5+ Feel No Pain save, though it can cast twice a turn, so I've seen people take Psychic Scream, along with Smite, which is a power that all Psykers have as standard, both of which deal mortal wounds to a single target, instead of using the widespread overload. On top of this, it's decently smashy in melee, and has a 4+ invulnerable save, so it's capable of being more than just a support unit, especially in the late game. Having said that, what makes the Maleceptor really interesting is yet another stratagem from Blood of Baal. They tried to give a lot of the monstrous units which didn't see much play, such as the Morlock, the Haruspex, Toxicrane and Maleceptor, a way of being a little bit more useful in this book. Encephalic Diffusion is a 2 command point stratagem that removes 1 point of strength from any ranged weapons firing at a unit within 6 inches of the Maleceptor for the whole turn. Combined with the Malanthrope's -1 to hit, this will be like the mobile bunker that my heavy weapons will be buddied up with, but those I will get to later. Also in the elite slot is a pair of Lictors, a single model unit that operate very much in the same way as the Assassins that I like so much, as well as having some of the coolest background fluff in the setting. They deploy off the table to begin with, and from turn 2 onwards, they can pop up to hunt vulnerable targets, grab objectives, or perform the Scrambler secondary. I dare say that it was the Lictors that first made that particular secondary mission so popular, as you'll see them in most Tyranid lists now specifically for it. When they emerge, they get an automatic reroll to their charge roll should you choose to do so, but if you don't, they also have an additional +1 to their armor save if they have the benefit of cover, meaning that the Jormungandr trait boosts them up to a 3+ armor save against ranged attacks, even out in the open. And their melee ability isn't bad, but pick your targets. Don't expect them to Rambo their way through entire squads. The bottom half of this list is where the Forge World really resides. In fact, everything from this point onwards is Forge World, starting in fast attack with a pair of Dimmacarans. These are what would happen if Geiger and Carpenter spent the afternoon together. Giant abominations where someone thought it was a good idea to grow a Lictor to the size of a greater demon and give it a second mouth in its chest. It's monstrous in combat with 6, Strength 8, AP3, D3+3 damage attacks, and an additional tail attack at Strength 7 AP3 damage too, but that's just the start. Once it's made its attacks, it can also use its thorax spine maw to pick out a model it is engaged with and roll a d6, adding that model's strength. Unless the result can beat the Strength 7 base strength of the Dimmacaran, its unit takes an additional d6 mortal wounds, and in addition to that, this triggers its digestive spine ability, so that if the spine maw killed a model, the Dimmacaran gets 5+ Feel No Pain for the rest of the battle to add to its already 5+ invulnerable save. Now, all of this is done before the Dimmerkaren consolidates, so if it attacks, you could always remove the models in engagement range first, but then you run the risk of not getting to attack back. It's also ungodly fast with a 12-inch move that can ignore vertical distances and jump over other units despite it not being able to fly. If you haven't figured out that this is exactly why the Swarm Lord and Onslaught are so important, then you haven't been paying attention. Of course, I can't slingshot them both, but it adds redundancy in case I don't get the first turn, and frankly they're too much of a threat to ignore for later turns, which forces my opponent into really hard decisions as they're not my only threat. Finally, in the heavy support choice, we have another pair of monsters, Barbed Hyridules, living tanks with a toughness of 8, a 2+ save, and 18 wounds to chew through. They don't have an invulnerable save, but as Jormungandr improves their armour to 1+ anyway, even a multi-melter only gets them down to a 5+ save, which matches the only invulnerable save available to them in adaptive physiologies. They carry 2 biocannons, each firing 6 strength 8 AP2 damage 2 shots, and, rarely for Nids, have a ballistic skill of 3+. 4 melee attacks at strength 10, AP3, D3+3 damage with a built-in reroll 1s to hit mean they're no slouch in combat either. Anything that comes to try and take them out had better be prepared to take some casualties themselves. The Malanthrope and the Maleceptor will also be bodyguarding these, so again making them harder to hit and even harder to hurt. The full list looks something like this. It comes in at 1,994 points, as with lists using a lot of larger models it can be difficult to find where a random 6 points could go. The only thing I can think off the top of my head is to give a single warrior a ranged weapon, but my OCD just will not allow that. Of your starting 12 command points, we only use a single one to double up on adaptive physiology. It's a simple list, but as I mentioned, it has been having some good results in the competitive scene, though some may prefer Gaunts over Warriors, or even just 3 units of Rippers to put points elsewhere, but I am really a fan of the Warriors. Some also prefer the Scythed Hyridule, which is a cheaper variant that moves faster, and has more attacks than the Barbed, though it's using the exact same melee profile, and trades out the biocannons for a 3d6 shot flamer weapon, more designed to cook Horde infantry at 18 inches. It also has 1 less point on its armour save being only a 3+ instead of 2. It's still plenty survivable and it's a perfectly viable option, especially if you think you could use the 40 points per model that you save elsewhere. The real personal choice in this list is probably the Maleceptor. Most would say that the Hyridules are tough enough already, or that the stratagem costs too much to keep up for very long, which is a fair point, it's just personal preference. A more common variant would probably see the Maleceptor replaced by an Exocrine, or possibly Hiveguard if you swapped out the Hyridules, and reduced the warriors to pay for them. I've also seen the Malanthrope swapped for Venomthropes, a Codex unit with a similar effect so that a Neurothrope can be taken as a second HQ for more effective psychic ability, but the number of options available is basically why I like the Tyranids, and I'm sure we'll be able to discuss these other units at length in other lists further down the line. For this list, however, that is going to do it, so once again, please feel free to share your opinion on this list with me in the comments, or, if you're so inclined, playtest it yourself. The only thing I ask is that you let me know how you got on. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to share with your friends, hit that like button, and also smash that subscribe button. After all, it is a very big shiny red button, and what are big shiny red buttons for, if not to be pushed? Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time at the rally point.